You've linked Pizzagate to Ukraine. We have a clip of the latest piece you just put out last night on this. Let's watch.
One of the most disturbing characters of the entire Pizzagate saga is actually connected to Epstein and to Ukraine's Zelensky. I'll explain that totally bizarre connection in just a second. But first, Zelensky appears to be connected to Epstein and to the trafficking of girls and children in Ukraine. And it was the upheaval in Ukraine that Epstein claimed in his emails would create many opportunities. So the question, were those opportunities to traffic women and children out of Ukraine? In the newly released Epstein files, we find repeated references to two Kiev-based modeling agencies, both still operating today. In one email, a sender tells Epstein that they're the best agencies in Kiev. The others only provide, quote, cheap escorts. Another message offers Epstein contact information for someone connected to around, quote, 400 girls. But the files don't stop with modeling.
So what, Zelensky, Pizzagate, Ukraine, you've been doing fantastic work on Ukraine, investigating all the corruption. This is something I had not heard. How is Zelensky and Ukraine now connected to this? I mean, a lot of the children look like they maybe came from Eastern Europe. Were they coming from Ukraine?
Well, it seems like there were a lot of kids coming from Ukraine, because what you find in those Epstein files, again, is that you mentioned a modeling agency earlier. Well, there were at least two modeling agencies in Ukraine, in Kiev, that were working with Jeffrey Epstein to help give him access to children. And one of them brags about how they have access to over 400 children, right? And they're called modeling agencies. We also know that in Ukraine, that he was working with Jean-Luc Brunel, who is a French model scout who worked with Epstein, who died in prison. He was hanged in prison in 2022, I believe, 2022. Yeah. And what was he in prison for? For the rape of underage kids and for trafficking underage kids to Jeffrey Epstein. And we know that he was involved with those modeling agencies in Ukraine and actually involved with Zelensky himself. We also see, and if you watch the piece, you'll see that when Zelensky was kind of on his way, his ascent to take over the presidency, he immediately became very connected to Epstein. And Epstein had lunch with him multiple times and talked about how he was, maybe a corrupt leader, but they had a great opportunity with him to be able to see a lot of great things happen. He refers to the upheaval in 2014 in Ukraine as there's going to be many opportunities, he says, and then he follows that up with the word many, right? Emphasizing there's a lot of opportunity. But what a lot of people don't remember too, Kim, and this is important, Ukraine, up until this war, where the media in the United States has whitewashed Ukraine into this bastion of democracy, free thought, Jeffersonian thinking, and like the freest people in the world, right? Because it fits with their narrative. And yet, what do we know about Ukraine before this war? Ukraine was considered consistently the single most corrupt nation on the earth. Right? The UN always had it ranked number one in the most corrupt countries first. Second of all, there's a Time magazine article from 2008 that talks about Ukraine as being the paradise of pedos, right? That pedophiles would go there because kids were so easy to access. Human trafficking was so huge there. And this was the reality of what Ukraine was. The problem is when you talk about Ukraine now, you can't say anything about Ukraine without people saying, oh, well, you must just hate freedom. No, Ukraine was known to be this place where you could easily take advantage of people. And so, of course, someone like Jeffrey Epstein, someone like Jean-Luc Brunel, people like that would flock to that country because it gave them easy access to kids that they could traffic out of that country and to move to other locations.
And you say that Zelensky and Jeffrey Epstein met?
3 times over lunch.
3 times. Jeffrey Epstein is connected to everybody.
Everybody. But there's another link there that's also very important because, that's one thing. Again, he's connected to everybody. So I think it's fair to say, well, but are we really going to, put this unfair standard on Zelensky? So in 2023, now Jeffrey Epstein's been dead, right? So if you really want nothing to do with this guy in these circles, and maybe there was pressure and money, and we all know that Zelensky loves money, so maybe he just kind of wanted to, hang close to that. But in 2023, Zelensky goes and he asks for a performance artist from Romania who lives in New York, right? She's very famous, Marina Abramovich, to become an ambassador for Ukraine, dealing specifically with schools and with children affected by the war. Marina Abramovich, her name is all over the original Pizzagate Podesta emails. She's a very close friend of John Podesta. She's this bizarre performance artist who does lots of stuff dealing with cannibalism. Her artwork is all about pain, violence, sexual violence. She does a lot of stuff with Lady Gaga where they did like performance art where they, have someone dead on like a cadaver's body and they eat off of it and all kinds of crazy stuff, right? And she also does something called spirit cooking, which is this whole performance art thing dealing with blood and semen. How is this woman, who is all over, like I said, the original Pizzagate story, how does she pop up all of a sudden in 2023 that Zelensky wants her to be the ambassador for Ukraine's children, which would give her lots of access? And I'm not saying that she's a pedophile or she's trafficking kids. I'm saying if I'm writing a bad movie, I would say, hey, remember this character we had? Let's just put her in here. Now all of a sudden she goes from spirit cooking on this side and she's in these emails and now she's going to be the ambassador to the kids. And somebody would say to me, don't you think this is a little on the nose? Like, come on. That's what it feels like when you're seeing these people and how they're interacting. So if Zelensky has nothing to do with trafficking, if he's got nothing to do with kids going missing, he's got nothing to do with Epstein other than Epstein's the financier who forces his way in, doesn't make sense that Zelensky is advocating for this woman who has her own ties to these stories to come in and to be an ambassador for the children of Ukraine and to work with kids who are affected by the war. It's bizarre.
And they claim, the claim we've heard a lot is Russia kidnapped like 35,000 kids from Ukraine. Right? That's been the claim. And we want the kids back, bring back those 35,000 disappeared children.
Well,
I mean,
and they keep going up with that number.
Yeah.
35,000 became 50. And at one point it was 200,000 kids is what they were claiming were missing. And that number was actually around 300 that the Russians were able to say they're in Germany and they're in Russia. And here's where the kids actually are. So the question I have, now that you've raised that, my question is, are there 200,000 missing kids in Ukraine? That's very possible. Now, they're not in Russia, and the Russians didn't take them, but there could absolutely be 200,000 missing kids in Ukraine. That would not surprise me at all.
Especially when there was many, many opportunities. Now with Ukraine basically collapsing after 2014, there are many opportunities. And I mean, if you're a trafficker, then you've now got a prime location to start trafficking kids is out of a country like Ukraine.
Makes it awfully easy. It's awfully easy.
Oh, what are we doing, Ben, with this government? I mean, what are we?
I hear you.
I just want to sit here and be like, well, this isn't the America that I knew, but it's like, maybe I didn't know America at all.
Maybe it is. But maybe it's not the America that we deserve to continue with, right? Something has to change. And I will tell you this, if you want a positive, here's a positive. 10 years ago, almost, when the original Pizzagate story was done, the technology was not near where it is today. The ability to talk about this, the ability for people to communicate. I mean, Twitter was trending with Pizzagate for about 6 months, halfway through 2026 and into the beginning of 2016, and then headed into 2017. For about 6 months, it was the number one thing on Twitter. But that was it, right? And what I would say is now people have so much more access to technology, the ability to communicate. I mean, I did my report on, as you mentioned, CBS in Atlanta, right? But today, people are filing their own reports from anywhere they want, and they can do it from their own home, and they can do it, however they want to. So the technology is so much better that I feel like the spotlight on this is much brighter, and it's much bigger, and it can't be contained, and it can't be controlled the way it was even just 10 years ago. I'm not talking about 30 years ago or 50 years ago, 10 years ago. We're so much further than we were then in terms of the ability of the people to push back on something like this. So if anything should encourage you, I would encourage you by saying this is a very different moment than what we saw 10 years ago. And maybe we do have a chance to actually make something change.
We can certainly hope. We can certainly hope. And you're definitely doing a great job of exposing so many of the I mean, you've been doing fantastic work on practically every subject, quite honestly, that's been out there. So I definitely encourage everybody to follow Ben Swann on X. You post a lot of your really fantastically produced segments there and excellent reporting, excellent research. You've done great work on Ukraine, Pizzagate, Israel, Gaza, like lots of different subjects. There's too many to tackle, but but you're doing it. And that is really fantastic. So everybody follow on X. Is there anywhere else you want people to go, or is that like the main spot?
The main one is X, but if you could follow me on Instagram as well, it's obviously the same. It's Ben Swann _ 2 N's and Swan. And I encourage people to share whatever you find, right? Watch it, but share it, because the more we get that algorithm to see this stuff, the more it pushes it out to people who are not exposed to it yet. And we got to expose more people to it.
And what I love about that segment you did on Pizzagate in 2017 is I can share that with everybody in my family and be like, look, this was on the mainstream news. Yeah. See, it's real. It's real. It was on the mainstream news. So there you go.
Exactly. Until they go to Wikipedia and they're like, but he got fired for it. So
Ben Swann, thank you again for being here. Really appreciate your time. Great work.
Thank you, Kim.